Bear Down Bears fans, another edition of Chicago Bears podcast coming your way straight from training camp. At the designer, Courtney Cronin. It's always fun when we get to be in the same building.
I know.
Is it a shock to you always how loud I am when we're in an enclosed environment?
I mean, what's a shock to me is how heavy this microphone is. Pat just handed me this and said, don't drop it. It's $499. It's at least 10 pounds. So I could do some some arm curls. I might do that during this podcast.
Do it, you get like the go away, come back.
The ones that I hate, like what I used to do at Orange Theory, where the butterflies, like I could lift like anywhere from like 15 to 20 pounds if I'm pressing, like doing like any sort of like bench press, any sort of like, normal, like anything like butterfly, like 8 pounds, and that's it. I do not have the ability to keep my arms going back and forth like that for more than like 5 reps without getting tired.
I was gonna say
I might try it with this today.
We'll hand you both of them. That'll be
exactly.
perfect. That'll be perfect. Well, listen, we got to talk to somebody who's ripping it up on the field and definitely got ripped today in Gervon Dexter. We've seen a lot at training camp. Not only do I want to talk about today's practice specifically, but just what you've seen over the last couple of weeks, because we've gotten what I would say is a lot of improvement, not just offensively, but from this team overall. So make sure y'all hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. This is the only place you're getting this kind of content. Stop playing with us, man. Let's start it off with today's practice. We saw what I would call and what I called yesterday, and what I said yesterday was the offense's best practice. I would probably still say that even after today, but the iron sharpens iron mantra that the Bears are playing by seems to be real. It's not just like we're going to say it, but really we know the defense is the iron and the offense is kind of clay molded together and trying to figure it out. Do you feel like we are seeing consistently, and especially today, an offense that is being sharpened up by this defense?
I mean, it helps when you have a Pro Bowl pass rusher who blows up a lot of stuff, like Montez Sweat has, and they're not in pads till Friday. So that's when you'll get a better feel for what's real versus, was Caleb sacked there? Was he not? I actually think back to a story that I wrote ahead of, right after he was drafted. I talked to a bunch of people from his past, and there was this offensive assistant who worked with the quarterbacks at USC, whose sole responsibility during practice was to blow the whistle whenever he was getting sacked. And, there were a lot of times where a defense is like, man, that's a sack, but it's Caleb Williams and he gets out of things. Yeah. So I'm curious to see how the Bears end up handling that when the pads are on, because, there's certain times today where it's like, is he climbing the pocket or is he about to get like his head taken off?
Is he about to get crushed?
Because, you can't tell just at this point. But in terms of what that does for the offense and how much it's going to help them in the long run, we've heard about this since the start of the offseason, that you go up against a defense that is chirping all the time, that has a secondary that is probably one of the best in the NFC, let alone the entire NFL, that's going to make you better, because they're trying to right now. And I know people want to ask, this combination of offensive linemen, this combination of pass rushers on this third down, is that the ones? Are they sticking with that? They are trying to throw a lot of different looks at him right now so he can get comfortable seeing a lot of different things. So that means they're mixing personnel. But when you have enough personnel to mix, it's a good spot to be in, I think, for anybody on this team, knowing that you have this trial by fire sort of experience and education in training camp. And then it takes its next step when you get to when they have pads on, because then we'll get to see, what do the one-on-ones look like between the offensive line and the defensive line? How does that translate to like when they're in 11 on 11 and they're in full pads? Obviously nobody from the D lines can be able to hit the quarterback, but who's getting through and who's getting through where? Yeah. That's how you get to test the strength of this unit, to see just kind of where it's at. So as a whole, it's been a pretty good, I know we're 4 days into this now, but it's been a pretty good 4 days for both sides. Like today, the defense coming through in the goal line situation at the end of the 2-minute drill, like that's not necessarily like a knock on the offense. That's a good, I think you could take that more as a positive spin on how good the defense was in that situation at the end of an hour and a half long practice, to still be playing at that level.
Yeah, it's to me, watching both sides go out there, and this is funny to me because I think back, I mean, I've been now at 2 training camps as media. I've been to multiple training camps where you're just in the stands and you get a lot of tickets because nobody was coming. Now you can't get tickets because everyone's excited. But this really feels like the first time, probably I'd say over the last 4 or 5 years, where every day feels like an offense one, a defense one, offense one, defense one. Not like the day, but like that specific moment, that
Sure.
specific play. And I feel like we saw some of that today, especially right when you got in the team periods and the situational periods. You saw right the 2 minute drill, which is a minute and 30 every time. I don't know what's going on with that.
They've changed it up a little bit. I thought it was like 110 the other day or 140 the other day. It was 130 today, starting at like
The
the
40, I believe.
40,
Yeah,
somewhere around there. But yeah, 2 timeouts left has been a pretty consistent part of that situation. And they to get down to the 6 today was good. It's just that's the next step, finishing that off with a touchdown
yeah,
and fitting it into tight windows. What my biggest takeaway from watching Caleb Williams execute in those situations, because remember the day, I think it was Sunday's practice, where it was just, you got to take a shot. And
yeah,
they wanted him to take that shot to the play that was, I think it was to Keenan Allen or to DJ Moore. The ball was picked off by Tyreek Stevenson.
right.
That was a situation that they wanted him to be aggressive. It might not always work out, but you got to test that window to see what you can get away with. I took that same sort of approach today when they got into the red zone, because that's the furthest we've seen them get down in a 2-minute drill so far. So the next step will be obviously scoring. But for Caleb, in these situations, it's not just like, when you feel pressure, it's like the actual like mental pressure of making a quick decision, making the right read, hitting your receiver in stride, and knowing who needs to be where, that we're starting to see those pieces get put together slowly.
Yeah,
Slowly.
and you can tell, right? He's kind of, when he got down there on the 6, I know it's
It's
heavy.
very heavy. Pat's got this thing
Poor
like right
Courtney.
here, and I'm just like moving it around, like changing hands. I'm not in condition. I'm not well conditioned for this. I need my stick mic that's like, 10 ounces.
See, I go form here. You get the little handle
I know,
piece
I
here.
keep
You
moving it
also,
around. I'm like, I hope this isn't like messing with
no,
the
no,
audio
no.
to anybody listening at home.
You should be good. But I think there was a moment there, especially in the 2-minute drill, when they're down at the 6 and Roma Dunze's in the back of the end zone. He does take a shot, but the shot that I'm not down there, I can't see it, but you saw Cole Kmet coming across the middle.
Yes.
And yeah, he was kind of covered, but I think, right, the thing that Shane Waldron's going to want to do, we know that he did this with Gerald Everett back in Seattle. We know that he's done this multiple times. Throw it to the big guy. He's going to be able to create spaces that you aren't always going to have. We saw Caleb do that 2 plays later.
Yeah.
But it was just a great defensive play by Jaquan Brisker to break it up. So, like, I think that's the thing where I want early in the drive, you want to see him rip that play. Later in the drive, he does. But guess what? Sometimes, and I think Bears fans forget this, it's, he didn't finish it off. To me, it's no, your top 5 defense got in there and broke that play up.
And that's going to be the push and pull here now that you have a more talented team, to figure out, okay, it doesn't mean it was a bad day for the offense. That was, in any situation, no matter how the strength of the offense, whether it was a top 10 unit or a unit that was, 27th in passing, they might struggle against a defense that has played together that long and looked that good in the, in the red zone today. So I don't feel like anybody really walked away feeling negative about the way the offense played in the 2-minute drill. Like, I thought it was a good sign for them to get down there. But in that situation, when the windows are so much more condensed, to have a defense come through there, game on the line. I thought what Eric Washington, the defensive coordinator today, said was, he's right. It's gut check time. Like, you've been going since, they did their walkthrough before we got out there, about half an hour. It's hot out. So basically you've been out there for 2 hours at that point. Are you ready? Like, are you ready to like come alive in that moment? And they did, which is a good sign for like what happens when you've played, 55 minutes of football and the last 5 minutes of the game. Like, there's a gut check situation like there was today. How do you perform in those moments? And if they can show anything like they did today and carry over like to other days of practice, I think you'll be feeling pretty good about the strength and viability of that unit and that pass rush in that situation.
What was the best play that you saw today from either side?
I think from Caleb Williams, the throw to Tyler Scott. So it's like, what do we say, like 30 yards?
That's about a 30-yard pass.
So
about a 30-yard pass. Nice dive.
Looked like a busted coverage somewhere. And then Tyler Scott not being able to stay on his feet, like, was just like a little bit of a downside to that, because he would have had a clear path to end zone. And I was talking with Carmen and Yurko about that, because like, what are we expecting from Tyler Scott this season? What's his role in this offense? He's a 4th round pick from a year ago. He doesn't need to be 1, 2, or 3, but on those deep balls on certain plays, can he be the go-to option? And I think it's a positive sign that Caleb Williams has gone to him. I know we have some highlights that we've been showing. He's gone to him a couple times,
Yeah,
whether it's in 7-on-7 and seeing it in 11-on-11.
The confidence in Tyler Scott, to me, I think, not to say it surprised me, because it's not like he had last season to the mess ups of last season to affect his opinion of Tyler Scott. But today he went to Tyler Scott a good amount.
Yeah.
Like I thought,
and
very
having
cool.
Keenan Allen out there today. Yeah. So Keenan had a vet day, as did Mercedes Lewis. So that's certainly that might have been a ball that went to Keenan Allen. Yeah. But
even yesterday we saw him kind of get Tyler involved.
And those are good opportunities for him to figure out, what is my role in this offense? Because we've also seen him on punt return a few times, because it does feel like that's a good competition for him to be a part of, because he's so fast. Like his acceleration, like how low he gets when he catches the ball and just almost like kind of like emerges up from it. It's neat to watch, because he's got like straight line speed.
He also my fear last year, he came in same numbers, same size, same weight as Johnny Knox. So I'm instantly like, bro, he looks so much like Johnny Knox to me. Do not put him on kick return. This season, he bulked up. He definitely looked. He's still small, but he looks bigger. He looks like
slight.
He doesn't look slight. That's the perfect way to say it.
So I would probably say there was that throw, and then the play action pass to Steven Carlson.
That was nice. That was nice. Got him back shoulder, I believe, won that one
in 11-on-11. Yeah. That was probably the two that stand out to me the most, like the best throws from Caleb during the day. I'm eager to see what that looks like Friday, because there's only so much you can judge when you're not in pads and you're not at full speed just yet, but they will be ramped up to a point now on Friday where I'm curious to see how they let them go, and how they let Caleb kind of climb the pocket a little bit more, and see, when he does take off, is he throwing on the run? Is it not just like ruled a dead ball because it would have been ruled a sack? But we're starting to see at least the pieces of like what these receiver combinations, what the tight ends, like when they're with the first team, second team, kind of, I know they're mixing some personnel, but like you still need to keep track of who's getting the snaps with the one, and what with the ones, and what that looks like in terms of Caleb Williams' chemistry with those guys and who he's going to.
Yeah, 100%. I think today was another good day for the offense, but yesterday I didn't really leave with a ton of concerns. Today I have two, I guess one, the center position is always a concern, because we saw Coleman Shelton get back in there. I'm not worried about that until pads.
It's been every other day.
Every other day.
I just wonder, like, what's going to be the point where they're like, all right, we're moving forward with this guy.
Wouldn't you say Saturday and Sunday is probably that, when you see somebody dominating pads?
Yeah, I mean, that still feels kind of early. Yeah. But I would just be, and I get it, you have to prepare for a lot of situations of different guys moving in and out, because somebody might have a very small nuance with how the cadence is, how they operate within the cadence.
Jenkins talked about that.
Yeah, and I do think you have to factor that in, as far as like, when do you want to, like, all right, you've tested this guy, you have multiple days of both. Let's allow Caleb Williams a situation and the time and the flexibility to tweak things with the same guy on a day in and day out basis. Doesn't mean that whoever's relegated to being with the twos can't ever get in with the ones, but I just think that at some point, you're with how important the quarterback center exchange is, you're going to want to make sure you can perfect that by having the most amount of time to do it. I just don't know when they're going to. Maybe it comes after the first preseason game. I know that feels like it's a week away, but
I would think, right, going into that first preseason game, you would want to have somebody kind of consistent going into that. You don't want it, right? Like, he's going to be taking snaps with somebody there. You've got to name a starter. That's why I said, right, to me, Saturday, first day in pads. They're not in pads.
Pads on Friday.
Pads on Friday.
Yeah.
And they're not in pads Saturday, right? It's just pads that day?
No, they'll have pads on Friday. I believe it's back-to-back days.
Back-to-back days,
It's just we thought it was Saturday because Flu said the 27th.
He said a week from,
It is the 26th.
So I would assume that, because you're going to get a guy in there that you can actually see, okay, this is how he actually goes against Gervon Dexter, who's a monster now, by the way. He's so huge. Against like the real pass rush that can actually get after him. I think you'll see more of that than you would without pads on. And so I would say that going into your first preseason game. My other concern that I do have, though, The left tackle position has not seen Braxton Jones in it. And I have counted about 3 sacks that are, to me, are guaranteed sacks. And every one of them is Larry Borom getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
And I have not been the big Braxton Jones is the answer at left tackle guy, but there is absolutely no way that we can have Larry Borom as our backup left tackle.
And I don't think he will be. I know as of right now, Braxton's in this ramp up period, so he's dealing with some sort of injury, which is, I guess, it's a promising sign because Flus did say that TJ Edwards was in a ramp up period. It looked like he was doing more today.
Yeah.
So, and he said that those two were close. So maybe Braxton Jones will be there at some point during the next couple of days when they're in pads, but he's been at left tackle during like walkthrough drills, drills at walkthrough speed. It's just when things go a little bit more tempo, it's been Larry Borom. They're in a tough spot right now.
He's had a bad training camp.
It's just because Karan Amagaji's not ready to practice.
Yes,
so like
100%.
if he was healthy, you would imagine that he probably would be your backup left tackle. So now you've got to use this, workaround for where you're going to slot in your swing guy from last year and just have him play that position for now. I think because I put my 53-man roster out, we did him as a company today.
Yeah.
I don't have Larry Borom on, and it's not just because of he wasn't drafted by this team or by this front office. He wasn't, he was a fine swing tackle for them. And I say fine, it's just kind of like it's a guy that if you need him, he can play a couple different spots.
Yeah.
But he has an escalator within his contract. I believe it's $3 million. It's based on playing time. So I don't know if that's a financial move that they want to make, a commitment to somebody that if they feel if they have that guy somewhere else on the roster, then maybe that person develops when you're in pads. But right now it feels like he's the best of their options at left tackle, which I can understand why that's concerning, especially since Braxton Jones isn't out there.
Yeah, it's to me like, I think you hit the nail on the head. Karan, I don't think people were thinking of him as being a major part of this team. I think they thought of him maybe as left guard, insurance, or right, you can kick a tackle into guard and kind of get away with that. He will be a major part of this team to me, especially if Braxton Jones goes down during the season or if you have any injury concerns with him, because you just don't have depth at that position.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not trying. The one player that I would think maybe has a little bit of depth is Matt Pryor. And we haven't seen him really get any left tackle snaps. He's only played at the guard position.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it was during camp we saw Pryor on the inside. He was playing it. He played center a couple of days.
He did play. Yes, he did play center a couple of days. They tested him.
This was like May, June. I wonder if they're going to maybe it's just a sign that Braxton's going to be back in a couple of days. We don't know. Matt Eberflus did say he's close and that it's not something, it's a ramp. He's in a ramp up, his own individual period to try to get up to speed. However, it does feel at this point that you just kind of know, all right, that wouldn't probably be a great option. Yeah, they're not in pads yet, but I don't think even having to see practice, you would know that. You would just know that kind of based on the previous years. If he was good enough to be the team's backup left tackle on a more consistent basis, probably would have been.
Yeah.
We would have thought of him as that, but we're just seeing it because Jackson's not playing.
Yeah, it definitely might. These might be early concerns that end up being nothing, which I would love for that to be the case. We still see Karan out there every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I would assume that I don't know what time on him because I remember.
He's still on NFI.
He's on NFI, but I remember minicamp was he's healthy, but we're holding him out.
I think they're just trying to bring him along slowly. So he got injured last year with Yale, so that's why he's on NFI because it wasn't an injury that happened when he was in the NFL, and it was a partially torn quad muscle. So when we talked to him in June or May, whenever it was, he didn't make it sound like this was something that I've got a really long way to go. There just sounds like the team is the one slow playing this, just to be sure with it, because they weren't anticipating when they drafted him that he was going to be contending for a starting job this year. So why push it? Why go faster than you need to?
Who's been your surprise player of training camp so far? Because for me, the name Khalil Herbert jumps to the top because me and you talked about it. We've said he may be a bubble guy. He may be having one of the best training camps out of anybody out there.
He's looked better than Roshan Johnson has.
Absolutely.
There was a pass that I'm trying to remember. There was a moment, I think it was yesterday with Roschon Johnson. We haven't seen any fumbles, which is good from anybody. So I think that in terms of protecting the ball, like clean football, it's not just the operation getting in and out of the huddle, not getting false starts. There's only one delay a game I counted today.
Yes.
But like
today was weird because it was taking I don't know if it was the headset or if it was him having something new to call. It was taking him a while to get the play together and get the play called.
I mean, it could be a number of things. That's a good observation with that. But no, I mean, for Khalil Herbert, he's been getting run with the 1s and the 2s and like a lot of runs throughout the first couple of days of camp. That's good for his stock as far as if he's going to be on this roster, if he's going to have to beat other guys out by outperforming them, which the answer is yes, or if he goes somewhere else. I thought he's had a strong camp so far, and obviously DeAndre Swift has as well. I guess Roschon Johnson hasn't done anything to like make me feel one way or the other.
Yeah.
So, but he's, a third running back right now. I'll say with the 2s, and I'll stay in the running back room. Something that's impressed me so far. And, I wouldn't say this is somebody who has like a chance. I don't think, at least as I'm looking at, I would say more practice squad, but Ian Wheeler, the running back from Howard, he is so fast. Like his acceleration, just how explosive he is. I think he would have, if the play wasn't, blown dead, I think he would have scored a touchdown today during 11-on-11 because he can just make guys miss. And he's a very, very interesting. He's got a cool like backstory too. I believe he was a pre-med major. Like he's an undrafted free agent guy who came in here, ended up getting a spot on the 90-man roster. I want to learn more about this guy just because like, do you have a role on this team? Could you potentially fit in? Could they start maybe using him back on some of the return as a return option? Like I'm curious to see that, but that's, he stood out to me so far just without being in pads, but like seeing what his speed looks like in real time.
No, yeah. He had a play in 11-on-11 from, at least from my vantage point. The cut outside was so quick. And it was quick decision making. A lot of times, right? The undrafted guys, it's like, okay, do I hit the hole? Do I go this way? Do I go? I mean, it was instinctual cut outside, and he was up the right sideline. And I think you're right. It would have been a touchdown.
Yeah.
I forget who I want to say 28 ended up like chasing him down near the end zone, but at that point he probably would have fallen in. Like there was I think the depth that we're seeing, especially in the running back room, but just offensively on this team is something that you can hang your hat on a little bit early on.
Yeah, it's definitely different than it was last year. I mean, you see it with the receivers. You see like even someone like a John Jackson, who believe it was on kickoff return in like one of the later periods today. It was him and 81. We're getting some reps back there. And so I mean, he's a receiver. Like we know that spots 4, 5, and 6 in that receiver room are going to be dependent upon where else you can contribute and on special teams. That's why we have Velus Jones penciled in on kickoff return, Tyler Scott potentially as a returner as well. And then spot number 6, like, is it Dante Pettis? I mean, he hasn't done anything so far. I mean, yes, it's 4 days in, but like, there's been nothing that's like, oh, wow, like lock him into that spot. We expect.
I saw him catch his first pass today, and I was like, I
forgot he was out here.
I'm so used to Dante Pettis being on the team and not practicing.
Yeah,
I kind of was just assuming that was happening.
I get it.
And then I saw him out there, and I was like, oh, he is practicing. Oh, okay, that's good.
No, I'm with you. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we won't know the 6th spot on this receiver depth chart for a couple of weeks. I can't cut the room right now because we still have to see what they look like at, when they practice against other competition or when they play against other competition in some of the preseason games and who is getting those reps in those preseason games, because that determines the roster further down the depth chart. But they have a lot more depth at that position than they have in the last 2 years, which is a good position for them to be in. It's going to make their job cutting this roster difficult.
Yeah.
But I guess you'd rather have that problem than the alternative.
Now, we saw something today that I don't know if this is going to be the case, but it was like, okay, maybe they keep an extra receiver because they removed a special teamer. We saw Velus playing not just on the kickoff offensive side.
He got a couple reps of the
ones. But on the defensive side as well.
Oh, yeah. No, I know what you're talking about.
And so I was sitting there and I was like, are they about to make Velus Jones a full-time special teamer? Which, I mean, with his size and his speed, he absolutely can be a gunner like Velus. Like, to do anything, go watch Cordero Patterson tape. You're smaller than him, but watch how he was like, whatever position you need me to be on this team, that's where I'm going to be. Do we see them keep an extra receiver and just kind of remove one of the guys who's been a specific special teamer if Velus shines in that role.
So you're saying keep 7 on the roster.
Keep 7 receivers on the roster, but basically Velus is Travis Homer.
Yeah, he's got your. I mean, what does that do for Homer then?
Yeah.
Could you keep both?
Could you keep both? That is what makes it tough because Homer's another guy that plays both ways.
Yeah. So but no, it's a.
Homer is a what is his cap hit if they moved on? We would get, I think we get $3 million back or $2 million.
I'd have to look it up. I don't
have it in front of me right now.
No, but I thought you were mentioning this one thing with Velus. Like he did get a little bit of run today with the ones.
Yes.
Like, and keeping track of the receiver combinations. Like I don't think that he's going to be solely relegated to
special
a special teams role. I think it's going to be the bulk of what he does, but they can still use him on gadget plays, on end arounds, on jet sweeps, because in the 11 catches that he has in his career, that's where the majority of his work has come from. And maybe they don't show that stuff in training camp or at least in open practices, but down the line, I think that's still an option for them.
No, for sure. I mean, we've seen 2 end arounds. I think both of them have gone to Rome Odunze, and he's made the most out of both of them. Yep. He is very fit. Like for the people that were like, oh, he's a 4.5 receiver. He's not, by the way, that's my favorite part after the combine. Oh, he runs a 4.5. He's slow. It's like, sir, you're on the couch eating potato chips watching this. Like you pull a cramp running to the front door.
Sure.
Like let's breathe. 4.5 is not slow, but he is not a 4.5 wide receiver. Seeing him out there, seeing how he moves, and if he is 4.5, he doesn't play at 4.5.
Yeah,
and I think
you don't become a deep ball like contested catch guy. Like any of the things that he excels at, I don't think you do that if people consider you slow.
Yeah. So
he's powerful, but he's not slow.
He is, you can see early on, Caleb Williams wants to get the ball to him in that 2-minute drill. He got 2 targets in that, got one, didn't get one in the end zone, in 11 on 11, consistently trying to find Rome. Now, like you said, Keenan Allen not out there today. It does make a difference, but you can see that connection building. But in the wide receiver room, I mean, I'll say this. Just like with Justin Fields when he was here, the DJ Moore connection with Caleb Williams has been something very impressive.
It just happens so quick.
It's so fast.
I think a lot of that's on DJ. This is now the 9th different quarterback that he's played with since 2018, which is, it's so hard to fathom. Like, how can you be so good with somebody so quick? And really there not be any sort of drop off. And a lot of that's DJ and the ability to adjust to the ball. And he's a smooth route runner. He's the yards after the catch stuff that we know that he had to utilize last year on a lot of those bubble screens and everything else. I wonder, and that's still going to be an asset if they need it, but like you won't need to defer to that this year as much. And because I think he is somebody that we've made this big deal about Keenan Allen being a quarterback friendly receiver. DJ Moore is too.
Oh yeah.
Like from the jump with Caleb Williams, and he spent the most time with him.
DJ had a year with Baker, right? Didn't Baker still get 4,000 yards with him or something like that?
It was Baker, Sam Darnold, PJ Walker. There was another quarterback.
PJ Walker
in there.
got a good his
Will
probably
Greer.
best season.
Like I mean, that's a fun game. Name all the quarterbacks that DJ Moore has caught passes from in his career.
DJ Moore was destined to be a Bear. He's living what Bears fans have lived.
But he's produced, and I get that question a lot. Like, when are we going to know who the number 1 receiver is in this offense?
We know.
Like we may know, but like, do you really need a number 1 receiver when you have this much talent?
I think
I think that's a fair question to ask, because being defined by roles versus being defined by this guy gets the most targets. Maybe that's the way that they decide is the best approach offensively to function as a better, more modern passing offense than they had before.
I think you still know though, right? Because the example I always look at with how the Bears have built this out is what they did out in Cincinnati, how many receivers there are in that room, how all 3 of them were able to go over 1,000 yards, but nobody would ever look at that team and go, oh, Tyler Boyd's the number 1. You know what I mean? Like Jamar Chase is still your number 1. And it's not that Jamar Chase, and I think DJ Moore is very similar in this way. It's probably the only way that I'd say they're similar because the stature is very different. But Jamar Chase may have a day where he gets 6 targets and he's still over 100 yards because on 2 of those targets, he's making the most of them. I think DJ Moore is that kind of player. We saw that with Justin Fields last year. You can get 300 yards if you break 3 tackles and get to the end zone on your own, or, Keenan Allen's day to get 10 balls, but you get 5 and you go for 80 yards and a touchdown. I can see DJ Moore being that kind of guy.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a role that, he's coming off a career year. He's been with this team, not necessarily in this exact offense, but like very clearly the time that he put in with Caleb Williams beginning in May when this group gets together, he was with him the longest amount. Now, not saying anything about, I mean, Keenan Allen has put in the work with him. So is Roma Dunze. I believe those, they all got to throw together in the offseason outside of here. But there is something about the connection with DJ where it does feel like it just picks up where it left off every single time, every single practice. There's never been a moment where it's like, man, they're not clicking today. They're not on the same page. We've seen 4 practices, but we also saw OTAs. We also saw minicamp, and we also saw just how comfortable Caleb Williams is when he's looking DJ Moore's way, and how DJ, like he threw a pass to him. They were going towards the Walter Payton Center today. He threw a pass into double coverage, and DJ came away with it. Like, it's just the way that he trusts him in those situations that, I can throw a contested catch. I can throw where somebody looks covered, and I know that receiver is going to do his job to get the ball and, to be open.
No, for sure. And that's the part that's exciting offensively with this team. And I mean, listen, the fact that it's coming together this fast versus a defense who you can't talk about this team without talking about the defense because it's still really, really good. And I got to give my 2 best plays today. Jaquan Brisker's breakup on that in the end zone. We talked about that a little bit.
Didn't Tyreek Stevenson had one as well, right?
Tyreek Stevenson had a really nice one. I believe that one was on.
That was in the 2-minute drill.
Was that Rome at the end? No, the Tyreek Stevenson one was when they were like, okay, the ones are done, and they were ushering us out. Yes, and then the ones came back on the field, and we were like, wait a minute.
It was an extra play in
goal line situation.
Yes, it was the goal line. It was down because I remember that because there's 3 that Jack Sanborn had a good play too.
And that was the other one that I was going to say.
I didn't mean to jump on you on that, but no, I mean if he holds on to it a little longer, he comes away with a pick.
No, it was. I thought that, and it's the thing that we don't talk about enough. Now, not only do you have the athletes, but you've also just got those guys who it's just like, no, he just knows how to do his job really well. He's just really like Jack Sanborn to me, and so many people came into this training camp and were like, I'd love to see what Noah Sewell can do. We haven't been able to see him on the field yet, but I'd love to see what Noah Sewell can do. I think that he's got the athleticism to take the spot from Jack Sanborn. My biggest thing is, does he have the smarts? Because today showed you, no matter how slow or how unathletic you think Jack Sanborn is, Jack Sanborn knows where to be. And he's the one guy to me who
I think it was a pass for Gerald Everett, to be in the right spot there. If it's up there, I guess like a little long, he comes away with a pick.
I think that this defense is finally set up, and the defensive line will be our question. That's where most people are questioning right now. But the defense as a whole is set up to get pressure for sure. And you've got guys who just know where to be on a consistent basis. And if Tyreek Stevenson comes back as the same guy, I think them saying top 5 defense isn't just them saying it this season.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to take them, I think so much of that is dependent on what this pass rush looks like.
Yeah.
We can say it right now, this looks like a top 5 defense, or they think they're a top 5 defense because of the strength of the secondary. And that's fair. That's a fair assessment, but you're not a top 5 defense if you have the second lowest sack rate, or the lowest sack rate, second, like whatever they think about sacks. But I don't think you're a top 5 defense if you have the second fewest sacks and the lowest sack rate in the NFL. Now, they seem, at least publicly speaking, they seem like they're, front facing. They're like, we don't feel we need any adjustments at this time. We'll see when the pads come on, because that's their first chance to gauge the actual strength of the pass rush, because you can only do so much when you can't hit the quarterback at all this month or next month, your own quarterback, and B, you just can't really tell until like pad level and how are they playing and like how are they, the contact element of that. When you take that away, it makes it pretty difficult to gauge if it's good or not.
Yeah, no.
But I think that I need to know that in order to know what they look like as far as like top 5, top 10 defense.
But I think you're not wrong in that at all. But the pressure rate that the Bears had, especially with Montez Sweat in the second half of the season, skyrocketed.
Sure.
And that's what forced a lot of those turnovers, putting quarterbacks in tough situations. Now, a lot of those wins came against very bad quarterbacks.
Sure.
So
and they still
pressure
had,
is going
had
to,
the second lowest, they still had the lowest sack percentage per
Yes.
game, even with Montez Sweat in
Yeah.
there. And it was interesting when Eric Washington was talking about like moving him around a little bit, lining him up different places.
Yeah.
That's going to be a weapon. But do they believe that they have, like we saw Austin Booker get some reps with the ones, how soon he's ready, how soon he will be ready. That's a storyline for like 2 or 3 weeks from now that I think will be a really intriguing one to see from, this 5th round pick. How is he ready to contribute right away? Like,
Yeah.
is there going to be some sort of pass rushing role for him on certain downs, certain sub packages that he might be in on? Because they want to rush with 4, and I get that. That's their philosophy. That's how they feel they are best prepared to affect the quarterback. With the personnel they have right now, the jury's still going to be out to determine whether that's better than it was last year.
No, for sure. And it falls on a guy we talked to today. The biggest question on this team is Gervon Dexter.
Yeah,
He's
they
come
are
back.
banking on it, banking on him in that second year development.
Yeah, he's come back a lot leaner. The body looks good. I mean, cake looks good. It's not always good for you.
Sure.
And so I want to see, is Gervon Dexter good for the Chicago Bears defense? Because, and I asked him in the press conference, how much is, coming into this season already having, I'm in a penetrating style, I can just go. And he talked about the feel of the game. And I thought that was something that, like what he said, you could see it last season. Like early in the season, he was like, I'm just trying to figure out where the heck to go.
Sure. I mean, he was going from one style of play to another from like where he was responsible, the 2 gapping to 1 gapping stuff. Like that's not something that was an overnight fix for him
at all. And so I think that we know how important the 3 tech is in this defense, but to see him in the pads this Saturday is probably the person I'm most looking forward to seeing this Saturday, which is tough because I also want to see if the center is going to be good. So it's like, if he's killing the center, we may have some problems on one end, but we may be good on the other. We'll see.
No, that's that battle. Like, and we're going to finally get to see one-on-ones.
Yes.
Remember, we haven't seen that the last couple of days because they're not in pads yet, but that's, receiver, defensive back one-on-ones. I think it was Jalen Johnson the other day who said it's like Alabama versus Georgia. You can see how competitive those are, but the offensive line, defensive line, one-on-one drill is always a looker. So like to see who's winning those reps, just keep track on Gervon Dexter because he's going to be a tough matchup. He's huge. Look at him. He's using his size and advantage. We finally got clarification on it. He said he did reach up and tip it.
Yeah.
Matthew said the other day, he's like, no, it bounced off
hit
of him.
In the chest. He did say.
No, he put his hand up. I knew my eyes weren't like deceiving me in that situation.
Flo's been at your head a little bit since we've been there. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Like that's a little.
Flo's been going at you a little bit. It's kind of
much. I don't get that one.
The funniest thing to me about seeing Gervon Dexter out there, and I'll say it, seeing Austin Booker out there, they're standing next to very large people. And I'm just sitting in the stands watching them on the sidelines. They're both just standing there like there's another drill going on. I think it was special teams in there. I'm just like, they're so much bigger than everyone they're standing next to. You have 2 possible massive pass rushers that you could put on this field. Austin Booker, to me, we haven't talked much about him because he hasn't been with the ones, but he kind of did the same thing we saw from him in college. Whenever you get your opportunity to go out there and show me something, he spent a good chunk of time in the backfield. Now, again, no pads on, but it just shows you he has a nose to get back there. And that's something that's good to see.
Yeah. And I mean, his length, when they talked about like Gervon Dexter's length, like that guy is all legs. Like his legs go up to like his ribs. And it's you're right. Like seeing the vantage point of, how big these dudes are. And even seeing Montez Sweat next to Gervon Dexter, like Gervon's a full 6'6", and I know it wasn't answered today. I'd be curious to see what he's weight wise, now, and what the official weight's going to be on the roster because he looks trim. Like he looks like the lean mass that he talked about. You can see that right now.
I wouldn't be surprised if the weight went up a little bit, even because the muscle's going to weigh more than maybe that baby fat is. But I mean, seeing him in the press room today, I was just like,
it's a mammoth of an individual.
If he has figured out the penetrating style, we're going to have a really good defense.
Yeah.
So we'll see what it ends up being. Let's finish it out with this, Courtney. What's the thing that you haven't seen that you need to see before we get to this first preseason game?
Before the first preseason game. Well, first off, I'd love to know by this time next week, which is, what are we at? Today's Tuesday. I hope we
Yes.
know how much Caleb's going to play.
That'd be great.
I think it'd be like, I've had people ask me that, like, how much do you think he's going to actually play in the Hall of Fame game? I estimate it as a series, but nothing more.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like, I mean, we'll see if Luce even like says, kind of like dictates what the plan's going to be, how many reps they think in the ballpark for him. But I think what I want to see before the preseason game, like, of course, like a 2-minute drill, a 2-minute drive that ends in a touchdown,
Yes.
where they can get the better end of the defense. Now, that's a tall task, as we saw today and as we've seen so far. But like, there's been different situations set up for them. Like even yesterday, the 4th and 3 that they converted on, when they were in their 2-minute situation, going towards, like, I'm trying to picture, it was coming towards us, the
Yes.
one to throw to DJ Moore. More of that. More of those, like, crunch time. Like, I'd love to see the kind of third downs, who they're utilizing, what the personnel is there, what third down defense looks like, especially when they get into pads, because the critical situations, to me, where you start when you're looking at like cutting looking at like who's going to play the biggest role when you're cutting down this roster, who's on the field in those gotta have it situations. And you can start to see them mix players in camp that you're like, all right, that's somebody they're going to rely on there.
Yeah.
So probably just more of that.
No, I'm right there with you. I think that, to me, is, if you can get it done, and I think today shows it, versus this defense that in coverage in that spot, right? Yeah, the defensive line is still going to matter, but the coverage that you can put on a team is going to be so important. And the Bears are really good and have a lot of guys that can cover. If they can get a success there, when you start to get into these games, it's going to be that window that's not open because Jalen Johnson has one of the lowest or the highest coverage numbers in the NFL. When you see, that on not Jalen Johnson, you're
Sure.
oh, snap, that's open. I could throw this now. Like, though, getting that successful now, I think, will give this offense a ton of confidence. And dare I say, this is the most confident we've seen this offense, and we're only 4 days in.
They definitely seem like they're not like wide-eyed about anything.
You're confident enough to talk
They finally
trash.
like bit back the other day, which I think that the defense was baiting them into doing that, and that's a good thing to see that they were willing to do that.
Yeah. And that one, I would have loved to see how that one ended, because Flus pulled them off the field because I guess they were at a 2-hour, they were at their 2-hour limit for practice. And so they put the special teams unit on the field. I would have loved to see how that one would end, because Caleb was moving the ball. But let us know how you guys feel in the comments below. What are your thoughts on what you've seen on social media, what you've seen out there of Caleb Williams? Of course, don't take any of it too seriously just yet. I guarantee you the Bears social team hasn't posted a ton of drop passes, although there haven't been a ton.
There really haven't.
I mean,
that's the thing. And there really haven't been. I mean, there were only a couple incompletions today, outside of the 2-minute drill.
The only drop pass, well, there was one. No, those were PBUs. The only drop pass I can think of is the one that DJ Moore had yesterday, when Caleb basically pointed him to a spot as he was extending a play, and it was a very uncharacteristic DJ drop. I mean, it hit him in the chest and it just fell out. I can't.
So I think that's
have we dropped the football outside?
I think it's part of the operation. Like, it's a much cleaner.
Yeah.
Receivers over the last couple of years are talking about a lot of drops.
Yeah.
A lot of like passes that just don't look good.
Yeah.
And that's not the case right now.
Let's hope that keeps up. I need that all the way to week 17. But for Courtney Cronin, it's your boy Pat the Designer, back at it again. We'll be back here tomorrow breaking down. Oh, no, we won't be. Well, we'll still be back tomorrow to break down more of what we see in the training camp. But there's no camp tomorrow, so we'll get to talk with Jason McKee. But appreciate you guys for tuning in, showing love. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Bear down. One love. Peace.